So Jacob Smith is based in the Department of Plant Sciences, and we're going to be moving across scales now, going from universe scale to ecosystem scale, and hearing about agentic AI in crop science.
Thanks. Thanks. At the Department of Plant Sciences, we're working with the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Centre as well. So this is more a kind of case study. So advancing agricultural resilience, climate and disease risks using AI tools, which really is just a small facet of what Boris was just talking about as well. Thanks. This is a AI CAMS funded sprint project as well, part of something bigger which I'll introduce. So I'm talking about crop diseases, primarily wheat rusts. They're actually several fungal diseases and they're very climate sensitive. And importantly, so the fungal spores, as you can kind of see in the bottom left picture, these microscopic things can travel very long distances with winds, across continental scales, and we've needed some quite sophisticated models to forecast that so far. So they have an average annual loss of about $3 billion, but actually when outbreaks occur, which can be every couple of years, especially for smallholders, they can lose their entire crop, so their subsistence is really at risk there. And the risks are continually renewing, especially in Africa and South Asia, where food insecurity is higher, for many reasons, between shifting climates, emerging virulent strains, which happens actually every couple of years, really. And also, given the current global context, many countries are pushing for self-sufficiency of food production, increasing reliance on existing food systems as well. So depending again on fending off any emerging virulent strains. So in response to that, there's been an early warning system set up, and it's been operational now for about 6-7 years. The key thing here about the data-driven parts of the inputs are wheat maps, state-of-the-art weather forecasts, and field surveillance in near real time. And then we run it through a series of disease models, and we have a series of forecast outputs. And then there's all sorts of different communication processes within each country, from text-based documents to phone-based apps and SMS, and word of mouth as well with extension agents. So there's all sorts of communication along the way. Since starting in Ethiopia, it's now reaching over 850,000 smallholder farmers, operating in 9 countries across sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And the crucial impact here is that it offers up to 3 weeks' notice for farmers to respond with control measures at the risk of an outbreak. So it's about applying fungicide appropriately when there's the risk. But something that's come up over that time, we've had all sorts of feedback on the way, but one of the strengths in terms of the request for more streamlined communication of risk, one thing that went well is we sort of automated the analyses and the provision of forecasts into the format that worked best, which was a Word document. So putting in survey analysis and risk forecast, that was kind of a surprise because it wasn't actually a key requirement of the project, but it was really well picked up. But there's necessarily still an expert component where they've been writing the key messages and recommendations specific to each case. And that's once a week for each country, 1 hour per country per week. Before then translation in each local language, and then further through the communication chain. So it's quite a long manual process. And you can see now that with 9 countries, we're starting to hit the sort of scalability challenge. It's taking more than 1 working day each week just to get the advisories out. We've also had other sorts of feedback which are really relevant. So to desire to try and make these messages more concise. You know, if you have to put out an SMS alert, then actually a 1-pager is nowhere near concise enough. Request for more geographic precision as well, not just national scale information. And through all that, we've also been picking up that really just anything that minimizes kind of the overhead of trying to interpret and then communicate those risk forecasts is going to be massively helped, because there's not usually a great deal of resources for these things. So through the Sprint project, we're basically trying out, and we're going to set up an LLM-based summary and recommendation system. It's got several sorts of advantages that you can see. So it can integrate the climate-sensitive context and other details that we can plug in, like what the wheat cropping calendars are like in different countries, potentially what the management practices are. It can shorten the communication chain. It can tailor messages to different spatial scales, and it actually means it can be scalable as as demand has been rising for additional countries, additional diseases, which I've not mentioned, but there's 2 other diseases we now work on, and different formats like pre-season advisories. And so the disadvantages, as is well understood around large language models, risks of hallucination, coming up with information that isn't really there, or bias, where it's not really representing the information correctly, or where actually we've just not been able to provide the full context. So like we might not have information on resource accessibility. So there's some things we can do for that we're going to be working on to make sure that we're providing the context and verify that it's being used appropriately, and actually have a way to evaluate to what extent there is bias. So what have we done so far? We've deployed several different open LLMs on the Cambridge High Performance Computer and on Office desktops. They're then available so that we can try and fine-tune based on the 100+ historical advisories that have already been written over the last 7 or so years. A bit I wanted to touch on, but it's kind of mentioned implicitly kind of in what Boris was saying as well. So, I mean, there's different tools to connect scientific knowledge to what AI systems are out there. So, and I think we can't claim to develop a cutting-edge LLM within this sprint, and we can't expect that it would stay cutting edge beyond weeks or months. So we also see that if we can connect the scientific knowledge that we're developing with in a future-proof way, so that it can interoperate with any kind of upcoming systems as they develop over the coming years, I think that would be a real strength. So 2 types of tools I wanted to touch on. There's a model context protocol. So that's more helpful when you've got more dynamic information, whether it's you want to call your favorite simulator based on a particular setup, or pick up dynamic information like forecasts. And there's retrieval augmented generation, so that's going to be most helpful for relatively static information like a database. So we have set up some MCP servers, and that process took some work. We were learning that actually if you're not working with a straight off-the-shelf or like standard scenario setup, like working entirely within the environment of Anthropic or something, then actually there's not really much documentation, and it's taken a bit of work and coming and going, but we've got something now that is set up is actually surprisingly concise, that it's 2 scripts of like 100 or so lines each. So we're really pleased we've got that, and it's currently set up to implement some simple forecast information to some different LLMs, bring it by coordinate location and by region name. And one thing we really wanted to be sure of before going further is that actually the scientific information is being picked up appropriately. So we have a sort of growing set of standard queries with expected tool calls and arguments that we're expecting a large language model to actually run if it has that specific type of request. And what we've been finding is actually, so a lot of LLMs have tool calling built in, not all of them. And we're finding that the larger large language models actually are verging on perfect at calling the tools, which is reassuring, but that's something we wanted to check on. And we also see actually some levels where it's not perfect. So like the Llama 8B is actually struggling with like some portion, like 20% or so of the types of queries. So we also have some sense of which models are going to be more appropriate there. And also, like, actually, we didn't expect it at this stage, but the responses exceeded our expectations. Like, basically, we're seeing, it seems as if like the cropping calendars that are present in different countries actually seem to be within the training data as well of these large language models. So that's kind of shifting what our hypothesis might be, is that actually fine-tuning might not be needed to achieve good summaries of these actually quite contextual disease risk forecasts. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So we're taking that to the next step. So we're now refining the LLM-driven advisory drafts. And we've got sort of benchmarking internally where we'll refine the prompt and what's being provided through the MCP tools. And we'll keep in mind whether to fine-tune or not if that's not looking very good. And then we're going to set up a blind test with the experts through this project to kind of score some historic human-based and AI-written advisories for different settings for some appropriate measures. So, and then the goal there is to get to like a first approved, like AI-generated advisory. Cool. That's all I really wanted to say. I mean, it seemed like a relatively simple message to try and say, but scientific output can be connected to AI agentic systems through RAG and MCP servers. I'm happy to talk through how we got through that, setting up the local setup. And actually, like, yeah, just the models keep evolving so much, we might not need to fine tune. They're doing so amazingly well at a lot of the requirements we have. So yeah, with that, I'd like to thank AIOCAN for funding the sprint, and CIMMYT and the Accelerate program for the support on the way as well. Thanks.
You go for it. Oh, cool. All right. Thanks for the nice talk. I was curious about whether you're hoping to get to the point where there's no human review even involved here. If so, what would be the cost of getting it wrong? And so, what's the ultimate goal? Or I mean, because this could be seen as just sort of accelerating the report generation, which I'm sure is a lot of work already. But you might still think human review is crucial.
Yeah, so I think most of the kind of plant pathologists and the agronomists we're working with think that humans still need to be in the loop to be able to see what sort of recommendations are going out. I think we're not really going to try and break that barrier with this sort of project. Right now, we're just trying to demonstrate what it can actually do, and kind of hold the hand up to that point and then figure it out. Like, there's a lot of ethics around suggesting decision making for subsistence farmers in many countries that aren't even your own, in terms of what's appropriate. And fungicide, whether to use it or not use it, not just what food you have, also has all sorts of health and economic and environmental impacts as well. So there's lots of factors there. So as I kind of say, like, I think our responsibility is to try and communicate the science as accurately and appropriately as we can. But then the decision making is kind of slightly, at least beyond our research group as it is. And I would also say there's other groups out there who have been setting up things like farmer-based chatbots to provide recommendations around irrigation and all sorts of management practices, but disease management hasn't been part of that so far. That's kind of the novel thing here, at least. But yeah, we would be able to connect with those and let them figure that out.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
Yeah, great talk. I was more curious about the implementation. What kind of local models were you thinking of implementing for this?
Yeah, so we kind of had a tip off to try and use Apertus, which I don't know if you would have heard of. It's through Swiss AI. It was released a few weeks before, I think, the pitch for this, and one of the graders was mentioning as well. So it was meant to have potential to work with over 1,000 languages. And it was generally scoring quite well. So that was our kind of incentive to pick a model that might also do the translation part. But we're fully aware, really, like an agentic system, we might have specific models trained on the language translation part. So we're looking at Apertus. We've been using things off Grok with a queue while we're setting up the MCP server. But when we're working with more sensitive information, yeah, we'll have Apertus and maybe like an open OLAMA or something else that we can deploy. Yeah, happy to hear any other insights. Like, I've not checked what's the new evolution in the last month or two either. Okay.
If there's no further questions, please join me in thanking you.